Right, so let's have a go at working through valenceometers of issues. Um, so, as I said, to draw some kind of ometer, we're calling this the valenceometer, and here we're going to have position issues. So these are the things that sort of Stokes had a problem with, to say that not all issues are position issues. So position issues being those sorts of things that people take different positions on. Some issues can be highly divisive. So we kind of think of the strongest position issues as those that are being sort of the most strongly fought over in kind of politics. And at the other end here, we've got the valence issues. And again, if we kind of think about this in pure terms, pure valence issues are those that have super high agreement, so shared goals of any given community. Now, hopefully, you've had to think about kind of which issues that you care about, know about, whereabouts they might fall on this scale. Now, I've had a little think about this, and perhaps right at the top here, you might say, I'm going to say economic stability. Most people would agree that that's something that we all share. So we don't sort of support, or we're not going to support a party that says, I'm going to make the economy more sort of unstable, or kind of proposing some kind of position on instability. So economic stability is something that we can all agree on, is something that we probably want out of our societies. At the bottom end, so thinking about the most divisive types of issues, well, of course, in the UK at least, this is probably Brexit, with the sort of objective evidence that we've got a very close to 50-50 split, so lots of disagreement on the EU integration question. And then you might think about all sorts of policies that fall somewhere in between. So again, in the UK context, redistribution is probably a bit of a hot topic. So let's kind of put this here. It could actually be a bit further up, potentially. Further down. And then hopefully in the UK, we might have something like, I'm going to say, LGBTQ plus rights. If we take a bit of an optimistic perspective on the sort of the openness to diversity in our community. But you can think about what types of issues might go from sort of being those that are the most divisive to those that kind of we have most agreement on. So we're kind of thinking about these issues as their kind of degree of positionness or degree of valenceness. And what I'd like you to do in your group work is to sort of share in your groups where you've put certain issues. And I think it would be interesting to see if you've got any points of disagreement, and perhaps reflect on why and where those disagreements come from. And perhaps also, if you do have disagreement, do you still think you could justify your own choice? Or do you think that you might actually change your initial thoughts on that? So kind of why I've gotten you to do this, it really speaks back to a point made by Stokes, in that thinking about which issues are position issues and which issues are valence issues doesn't necessarily have to be settled a priori. So it's not a completely normative standard. It's not a completely normative question. It can actually be settled empirically, and actually what might come out of your discussions of the issues that you've placed along this valenceometer is that a lot of these issues are going to be context specific to kind of how much valenceness they actually have in them. So in some communities, we might see that LGBTQ plus rights, for instance, that is a highly divisive issue. So we might see that put lower down on this spectrum. Likewise, redistribution, actually some countries pretty much agree on the level of redistribution and say, yeah, we should be redistributing more. We have high sort of coherence in political views on that. So strangely, redistribution might not be sort of a kind of an issue position at all. It could be actually more of a valence one. So thinking about these different types of issues and whether they are positionable or not doesn't necessarily have to be settled in the abstract. We can kind of do this through, polling data, information on people's agreement and disagreement on issues. And And that really speaks back to kind of a point that's not that dwelled on actually by Stokes, but one that he did make early on, about this kind of idea that these valence type issues can be determined empirically. So why I'm doing this and why I've gotten you to do this exercise is that actually thinking about these issues, valence and position issues, as essentially, or conceptualizing them essentially two extremes of the same continuum, allows us to think a little bit more about how parties might actually choose issues strategically. So subsuming valence and position issues along one type of continuum is the starting point for what we're going to talk about shortly, and that is issue yield theory. So in order to kind of move on from where Stokes and Downes left off in these kind of two different aspects, two different types of issues, if we can subsume them along one continuum, then perhaps we can say something more meaningful about strategic selection of issues by parties. And that's where we're going to go next.